everything happens by the will of God. The prophet, that's not a sin. Obviously, no. Ibn Maktum, he interrupted the prophet, and if somebody is talking to people, obviously, when you interrupt, you are the one in mistake. You are the one committing the error. But instead, the chapter rebuke, or we can say it corrects the prophet. So that is how the world it is. It shows equality. We need to look at the equality and not focusing on only one side. That is the main objective of the chapter. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين على أمور الدنيا والدين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربي زدني علما نافعا أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم إخواني وإخواتي في الله إن شاء الله بإذن الله كريم جل في أولى. Today we will look at a chapter which is called Suratul Abasa. Suratul Abasa. First of all, I'm very pleased to have covered two chapters, and that is Suratul Nazi'at and Suratul Naba. Suratul Naba and Suratul Nazi'at, we covered them. For those who may be new to the channel, where they can visit the previous videos and check the two surah where we have given the tafsir and the translation actually of these two chapters. Inshallah, we are going to look at the third chapter now. Apart from the opening, obviously we know every person knows Suratul Fatiha. But after Suratul Fatiha, we have looked at Suratul Naba and Suratul Nazi'at. Now we have covered two so far. And if we include the Suratul Fatiha, obviously it is, we have done three chapters of the Juz Amma. Or we can say maybe Juz Amma, we have done two chapters, because Suratul Fatiha is the beginning, the first chapter of the Holy Quran. So it's not in the Juz Amma, it is in the first Juz, just to correct you. So inshallah, bi'idhnillahi kareem, today we will look at the Suratul, the introduction part of Suratul Abasa. Suratul Abasa, as according to the Mufassirin, or according to the scholars, this chapter it is talking about the it's divided. First of all, there's a very interesting story. Before we look at the chapter, it's good to understand the sabab nuzul, the cause of the revelation to this chapter of to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What caused the surah to be revealed to the prophet? It has message, and we know from the beginning it starts with at least correction, and we can't say is a rebuke, but is a correction to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The chapter itself is carrying the word frowning, or he frowned. Abasa. Abasa is he frowned, or frowning your face, obviously we know. So what happened is that during the time of when during the time of the Prophet in Mecca, when there was a time the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving da'wah, was trying to preach to the Meccan leaders. So he was giving da'wah. He was just calling to the deen. He was calling them to the Islam, trying to preach them, give them actually evidence from the Quran, trying to ask them to be Muslims and leave their idol worshipping and idolaters, you know. So what happened is that the aim of the prophet is to preach them so that they can be guided and accept Islam. So he was hoping that these are the leaders in Mecca, and if they accept Islam, obviously there's a greater chance of their followers, because if their leaders, especially if you are a leader of somewhere or in the community, you have people behind you. So obviously, if he catch the attention of these leaders, and probably they were businessmen, so their followers they are likely to accept the Islam as well. So the most attention he was giving them, the prophet, is to get them guided into Islam, so that he can also get their families, their followers, obviously. So what happened in the process? There's a companion of the prophet who was called Abdullah ibn Maktoum. So Abdullah ibn Maktoum was a blind man. So he was a blind man, and he was a great actual companion, even after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated to Medina. Sometime when the prophet is not in the city, he was the one put in charge. He was given the leadership authority. He was the one being given the work to be as a governor or as a leader when the prophet is away. For example, maybe when he went, he's out of the city for maybe a battle or something, as a other preaching. So he was a very great companion of the prophet. He was a blind man, this man. So he came in the time when the prophet was busy focusing on these leaders so that they can be guided and get his followers, actually, and actually try to get them into Islam. So when Abdullah ibn Maktoum came, he asked the attention of the prophet. He asked the prophet that, can you teach me what God has revealed to you? What has God has taught you, oh Muhammad? I need to get knowledge. I need to be taught. So in that process, he interrupted the prophet, and the prophet didn't like the action. Actually, the prophet didn't like that that action, that behavior. So in return, he frowned his face and turned away from him. That means that he was very eager to get these people, these businessmen and these Quraysh leaders. But now the chapter starts by correcting the prophet that he should not give attention to the people who he doesn't have authority to guide them. God says you don't have the right, you only need to give focus and tell them actually the message, but you don't have to use all the force, ignore others, especially the blind and disabled people, only that to get people who think that they are self-sufficient, because they think that because they're leaders, they are businessmen, they have everything, they have the power, so they don't need Islam. They think that. So in that return, God tell them, and especially the prophet, that you should not focus on those, because God guide whoever He wants, and He misguide whoever He wants. If they need to get into Islam, they can. If they don't want, it's not must, because Islam does not need them. Obviously, God does not need them. It's them who need God. That's how the chapter unfolds. That's why the chapter starts by telling the prophet, you should not focus on these people who are thinking only of their worldly affairs. They don't think of their future life in hereafter. So that is the chapter. Most people, they look at as the prophet did a mistake. It's not a mistake. These things is happening to give people actually lesson. Always, it's not a lesson to the prophet. It's for the whole mankind, all people, that you should not pay attention to people who have no attention to you, rather than give attention to those people who really need it and they can be guided. So and this man also was a blind and is disabled. So the Quran also tells us that you should not give priority to others, and obviously leave the disabled behind. So that is the sabab nuzul. And in the chapter as it unfold, that after that the chapter also talk about the bounty, the actually blessing, the favors God has given to mankind, and instead they are actually ungrateful. For example, he's saying, God says, can they look how they were they have been created, mankind, how he has been created? Can they not look at the food they eat? We are the one who have actually gave them the food. We are the one who have tried to give them the blessing, but still they don't recognize God, and they don't thank God. They don't even they are not grateful. And that is at the end of the chapter. Also, God tried to remind the people that it's not actually this worldly affairs you are looking for. It's the hereafter is much better, because the day of judgment, people, how they gonna be actually, this the situation of the hereafter. He's trying to tell the people that the when the actually the trumpet is blown, or the day of judgment, everyone will be very busy looking at what he has done. A mom will never look at her son or at her daughter, and somebody can even a dad can never look at his uh, children and his family. People, everyone will be very busy with his own affairs, rather than their families, their relatives, something like that. So it is a very, very important chapter, and it's talking about um, both the world affairs and to prepare for the hereafter as well. So it's something that we should actually be very, very mindful and grateful to God, and get the lesson of the chapter, inshallah. Bidin Karim. I have spoken a lot, so I don't need to prolong the speech. The main objective, I think, is achieved. You need to look the chapter. Don't look in the negative side. Rather than is to teach. Everything happens by the will of God. The prophet, that's not a sin. Obviously, no. Ibn Maktum, he interrupted the prophet. And if somebody is talking to people, obviously, when you interrupt, you are the one in mistake. You are the one committing the error. But instead, the chapter rebuke, or we can say it corrects the prophet. So that is how the world it is. It shows equality. We need to look at the equality, and not focusing on only one side. That is the main objective of the chapter. So with that few remarks, wa sallallahu wa sallama ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in, wa billahi tawfiq, wallahu a'lam. That is according to my opinion. If I see that you see that some place I have gone wrong, is my nafsi and shaitan. But a place where I've trying to give you a good explanation, remember that is God who has guided me. Inshallah, bidhnillahi karim. Wa billahi tawfiq. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.